Hey everybody, welcome to Quirk Radio. It is Thursday, March 16th. I'm your host, Randy McRae, and my co-hosts, Quan Lee and Kevin Langman. How's it going, guys?
Good. How are you?
All
How was
right,
your day?
Fine. I'm a little tired today. How about you guys?
How about yours, Kevin?
Yeah, it's all right. I'm starting to go a little stir crazy sitting around home with my broken foot, but at least it's sunny when I look outside.
Hey, you look and
What's
you can't
the
go. It was
recovery?
snowing up. It's snowing quite a bit up here this morning.
It did
Yeah.
snow down here a little bit too.
Looks like it's really nice out now.
Yeah, it's nice and sunny
It's
now.
melted. And yeah.
Yeah, I've got
What's,
at least another 3 weeks in the cast.
weeks.
So.
Brutal. How do you find it getting around?
As long as I don't have to go further than like 2 blocks, it's not bad to walk. But after after walking for 5 minutes or so, it definitely starts to hurt.
And you're
But
able to drive?
I could drive an automatic, but my car is a standard, which I cannot drive because it's my left foot.
Yeah, it'd
So
be tough with
no
the clutch.
no clutching possible.
Yeah, that would be tricky.
Do you know, I came across this stat. In the U.S., 18% of Americans know how to drive a manual transmission.
That's
That's
actually probably higher than I thought it would be.
That's
be
what I was
honest.
going to say too.
That's like
We all drive
50
sticks.
around 50 million, right? If you're 54 million on 300 million people.
So if
So
you
over 200 million do not know how to drive standard.
So if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, what I'm hearing is you have to be able to drive a stick shift.
Yes.
And that's the end of this week's episode.
Yep, go learn how to drive stick.
But
On
it's-
that note,
Yeah.
what is the golden rule? What is the one thing that makes you a successful entrepreneur? Because we all know that everything has to be broken down into like one rule or one comment or like the 10 things that will make you successful. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic.
No, but
Right.
if you had to pick one thing over everything else, obviously we know there's a million things that are into play here, but what would you say that one thing is?
Tenacity.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
Or
tenaciousness, if you wanted to form it as a quality. And sidebar, to hockey announcers out there who love to use the word, this player's got stick-to-itiveness. Stick-to-itiveness is not a word or a hyphenate or anything. There's already a word to describe that, and it is tenacity. Or tenaciousness. Stick-to-itiveness. Stick-to-itivity.
All right, so Randy's word is stick-to-itivity.
Yeah, stick-to-itivity is what you mean.
I think I agree. I think I would agree.
Yeah, I can't really think of a better word actually. You got to be flexible and hardworking and stick to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say
So
just
wait,
hard work.
wait.
but That's
We're just gonna throw tenacity out the window, and we're gonna stick with
No.
stick-to-itivity.
I didn't want to steal your word. Does tenacity include flexibility?
I suppose you could consider it too. I mean, fundamentally, it just means you refuse to give up,
Mm-hmm.
and you keep like at TMD 29 last week. One of the center messages was just always take that step ahead, that next step, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that is tenaciousness. No matter what adversity you face, you just find a way to fight and take that next step forward.
Yeah, which can often mean changing.
That means flexibility and change, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In the context of it, but
No, I think tenacity is a really good word to kind of all encompass.
it's all encompassing. Yeah.
so how do you be tenacious if you're not? What if you start?
Is it something that you're born with, or is it something that you develop, or someone teaches it to you?
I think you develop it. I don't think you're necessarily born with it. I mean, probably to an extent, but I think
Yeah, I
in a
think
lot
some
of
people
ways.
are definitely more predisposed to that sort of behavior, but
But I think you can
it's
train
something
it.
you can develop.
Like I would argue that going through the CA program, finishing university, going and getting a job at a big firm, having to work tons of hours in a kind of a high performing environment with a lot of really smart people, while simultaneously taking a course, and especially CASB, you had to take the course, do your assignment. You wouldn't get graded. You'd get they document your errors and send you back to go fix your mistakes, and then you'd have to submit your next assignment with your mistakes from the week before, and then they would grade your mistakes again and possibly give you a second round of what they called revisions. Is that not training tenacity? In a way, meanwhile you're working, you're fighting through that, you're finding a way to get your assignment done, you're finding a way to answer your revisions, following up on your own mistakes and fixing them.
Yeah, I think
that's a form of tenacity, like training tenaciousness, I think.
Yeah, but that comes a lot later in life, right? Like
totally.
that experience.
But I wonder, but it's all through school, right, too? Like,
and some people can't stick with it and they drop out and they go on a completely different path.
Do you think that's kind of how life is right from start? Like you have people who kind of self-remove themselves from the process all through school and work and categorize themselves in an area where they're comfortable. And I don't say this to be critical. I'm actually just trying to think this through from a logical standpoint. Does it, at some point, everybody's going to face a challenge. And the question becomes, do you push through it or do you back away?
Yeah.
And there's no right answer, right? I'm not saying
it's a personal
one's right or wrong.
decision. Yeah, it's definitely a personal decision. And it depends on your circumstances and what's in it for you, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And being tenacious doesn't just apply to being an entrepreneur, right?
No. Nor does it mean if you stop something or change your mind, does it mean you're not a tenacious person and you wouldn't be a successful entrepreneur?
Mm-mm.
You can start something, realize it's not for you, and then finish it. That's being self-aware, or not finish it. That's being self-aware to an extent, right? I'm not saying to people out there that the right way to live your life is to meet every single challenge head on for 70 years and plow through them like a bulldozer. That sounds quite exhausting. For some people, that's probably the way to do it.
Well, yeah, there's definitely people who do live that way.
Yeah.
But a lot of the guys out there that you see are tenacious, I think in a lot of circumstances, there's got to be something kind of underlying that whole thing to make it easy for them to continue on with what they're doing, right? Like,
is it easy though?
Well,
I don't think it's easy.
Well, I think if you have
hard.
a passion,
it's exhausting.
If you have a passion for something, it's a lot easier than if you didn't.
Okay, fine.
Or if you believed in something, if it was like, congruent with your values.
Or if it's brought you success.
Just because it's in your values, you believe in it or have passion, doesn't make having a hard conversation or hitting something head on that is going to be a challenge. I don't know if that makes it easier. It might give you the fortitude to get through it, but it's like, I don't know if meeting a challenge head on is an easy thing ever. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it wouldn't be a challenge, right? Otherwise, you'd be like, well, whatever, I'm passionate about this and I can drive through this. It's no big deal. Like, I know you must face, like, I know you're really driven by passion, but you must face times where, a challenge comes up where you really have to kind of steal your mettle.
I'm not saying it's easy at all. I'm just saying it's probably a lot easier. Like when I look
relatively speaking.
Yeah, from a relative term, just to motivate yourself to keep doing it. Like
it gives you the strength to face that challenge, as opposed to you saying, I really don't care about this, so bail.
I mean, yeah, if I didn't have that desire, if I didn't have the desire at all, I mean, I'd get nowhere. And if I tried to force myself to do it, it'd be very, very difficult.
Well, I don't think you would, right? Like, I think you would just say, I don't care about this enough to put myself through it.
Well, and having the experience of having pushed through challenges in the past and benefited from it is going to fuel the tank to do it again in the future, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. And again, like, every single one of them makes you tougher, makes you stronger, and gives you also a new set of tools, which is probably the most important piece. A new set of tools to deal with the next challenge. Yeah, and something that was super challenging in high school is not going to feel very challenging in university yet by that point, because you'll have dealt with it 100 times. Something challenging from university is not going to feel overly challenging when it comes up again in your professional life. once you push through them. Whereas I think if you never push through it, if you never fight through that, you don't develop that strength.
Yeah, and so that's how you do it.
How much do you
It's
think
like
it
mental
carries
weightlifting.
over
Like your
between
ability to fight
your
through?
different challenges? Yeah. So if you're
I
looking at
think
like
every
maybe an
time you do
athlete
that,
versus someone like a professional.
I think every time in your life that you face adversity and you meet it head on and you battle through it, win or lose, you're stronger on the other side. I really view it, it's like weightlifting. You know, if you try to hit a new max best on your squat and you don't make it, you're still stronger for that failure because you got out there and tried. And then maybe you do make it next time, right? I kind of see it like that. Like every single challenge that you push through is a rep in your weight set of life.
Gets you that one step closer to your goal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, whatever your goal is. Even if your
Success
goal
or
is just
not.
self-development, right?
Yeah.
Even if that's all your goal is, every challenge, you know, it really is, to use a well-used adage, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think that's generally pretty accurate.
Well, and if you have confidence in yourself, you know, that's going to spill over into all areas of your life generally, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, let's be clear. I think that's an important word. I think it's dumb to think that one personality trait's going to make you successful at being an entrepreneur.
Oh,
To steer it back towards a business. But like you said, confidence comes into play. Kevin, you said flexibility as well. Quan, you said passion. I think all of those all of those would have been great answers as well, in my opinion, because I think it's about putting together the tool set. But do you think, at the end of the day, do you think that I think tenacity is probably one of the biggest ones early on. And fortitude, like it is. We've talked about it before many times, and I won't go into it again in depth. But like, how many businesses fail in their first year? Do we have stats on that offhand?
It's pretty high. I don't have official stats, but
I
know
would
that.
wonder what percentage of that is due not necessarily to a failure of the business outright, but somebody just not willing to continue on a very difficult path, especially that first year.
I'd say I wouldn't be surprised if it's a large percentage of
Quan, we know
businesses.
people who have done that. We know several people, right, who have just said, I can't continue with this.
So, according to 2016 statistics published by the Small Business Administration, about 78% of small business startups survived the first year.
Really?
78% survive the first year?
Yeah, but 95% fail within 5 years. No, sorry, wait. Never mind. That second bit's not correct. That was a previously believed statistic that they've proven wrong. I'm trying to find.
I was going to say, that sounds weird to me. By the way, while Kevin's looking that up, everybody hit us up on our YouTube channel. If you're listening live, please comment, ask questions. We'll try to answer them during the show. And same thing, I'm following our Twitter feed here. So I've got @Quirk Radio open. You can DM me or tweet at me, and I will do my best to answer you.
Yeah, let's go back to the main topic. So we were going to talk about the passion and the why, like why go out and start your own business and be an entrepreneur. What are your reasons? I mean, what are your thoughts here? I mean, because we're surrounded with so much information and opinions, and you go to social media and you always see guys who are posting about things related to fame and fortune, and a lot of people want that lifestyle or want, that image of success for themselves.
Entrepreneurs?
Entrepreneurs? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Huh.
I
like
mean,
that.
I think it's a problem because, like you
Because it's
say,
bullshit?
social media and the media, they're always gonna, glamorize these successful entrepreneurs, and I think often people think, oh, that they're like overnight sensations, but that doesn't happen almost ever.
That's why I think it's important what we do here on this show. we don't just talk about, oh, it's so great and these are all the successes. Yeah, you know what? We're all doing well. We're finding our successes, but we talk about our failures. We talk about the difficult things. We talk about the hard.
Well, and that's what I want to expand on because, you know, when I made my leap, it was pretty much all passion based. I want to help people, right? That's what I said. I didn't even really have that clear of a plan. And I was in some communities, you know, some online communities. I followed some people online, and you know, that whole follow your passion mantra, which I think is generally good advice, but it definitely has to be taken with some hefty grains of salt, because you know, wanting to help people is great, but building a business around wanting to help people is not easy, and you know, you need to be doing something that is legitimately, that there's a legitimate need out there for, and that people are willing to pay for. You know, if there's something that you want to do that helps people, but they can get through nonprofit organizations, or you know, maybe the people you want to help don't have much money, that sort of thing, it's gonna be pretty hard to build a successful business around that, and you have to be realistic about that,
or
right?
Even if they need help, but they don't want to ask for it. I mean,
Yeah.
what are you doing with those guys too?
Yeah.
It's really tough, right?
Yeah, like, you know, trying to be a life coach, and yeah, you need people that want to, that they're going to admit they want help, and they're going to have to want to pay for it, and it's not as easy as some people might make you think. So, you know, you definitely, it's important, I think, to be passionate and be you know, interested in the area that you're building a business around, but it does have to be realistic as well. There has to be a need out there for it. So, I mean, long story short, I definitely fell a little too hard for the follow your passion advice initially.
But you were inspired, right?
Yeah. So how did you end up kind of following those types of situations and seeing all this where it convinced you? Like, how did you land there? Because
Well,
like
I mean,
I didn't have any of that. I was just like,
I think it was a long winding road. You know, starting as far back as when you know, when I first started thinking I gotta make a change and do something that I enjoy more, and just, you know, reading books, searching online, joining online communities and stuff like that. There is, you know, this, you know, follow your passion based, purpose based, you know, world out there, and there are gurus or experts in those fields that are, you know, they kind of cover the spectrum. Some are just like, just do it, just follow your passion, and everything will work out. Thankfully, there's others out there who are a little more realistic and say, you know, you got to have a plan. But if you're someone who's I don't know, can maybe be easily persuaded into and optimistic, you might think it's a little easier than it actually is, right? Because you can kind of get create these great visions and whatnot in your head, and
You're almost blinded by any potential risks or challenges that
because
might
it can become a bit of an echo chamber, right? And
yeah,
you know, I know there's a lot of great people that I met over that time, but not many of them said too many negative things about my ideas. Always just like, yep, it's going to work out, right? Mm-hmm. And that's great. I mean, I do believe in the power of positive thinking, but you have to have a dose of reality in there too.
Yeah, I mean, when I went through a phase when I was reading motivational books and articles and following, you know, guys like Gary Vaynerchuk and you know, it says Tony Robbins, you know, all those guys, and read it all. And after a while, the message is kind of the same. And so eventually I just cut myself off from all of that. Every so often I'll come across some motivational quotes and stuff like that. For me, it's just a source of inspiration. I wouldn't say I live my life by it. I do agree with some of it, not all of it. So it's just I guess gives me a bit of perspective sometimes. Even though some of it might be common sense.
I think it serves a purpose, right? Because, you know, when you are someone who's, you know, facing tough times or needing some inspiration, I think it can all definitely help. And there is some great information and knowledge that those guys like that share, but you do have to, like I said, you have to temper it with some reality as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe it's the information and how I understand and use it versus someone else who,
and actually using it, right? Because something you can get trapped in is this, cycle of learning and always wanting to find out that next bit of information that's going to push you over the hump, so to speak. So it's great to learn these things, but you have to apply them, because if you don't apply them, nothing's ever going to happen.
I kind of feel like being an entrepreneur is a little like school of hard knocks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can read all these things, you can get all this information, you can do all this, but like until you get your ass out there and start working, you're not going to actually learn how to apply any of this in the real world. And then you're going to learn a whole lot of lessons that nobody talks about, including us, because they're different, I think, for everybody. And then that's really where I think you can find that balance between it being inspired and being practical, is once you're kind of in it. I'm not sure. Do you think that's something you can figure out ahead of time? Or is it more innate?
I think maybe some people are lucky and blessed, and there are definitely examples where, they find that intersection early on. But I think you're right. A lot of people don't necessarily find it the first time around. Hell, I'm on my fourth venture now, and I'm only starting to get, I think, much closer to that happy medium of the two.
Yeah. I think you can throw out like, the major like tech stories like app development in a lot of ways, because they're so few and far between. And I suspect most of them probably went through a lot of tough times too.
Oh yeah.
And had to started with some inspiration, and then or it evolved too over time. It started off as one idea. Like Facebook, for instance, is a far cry from what it was in 2007 or 8, when when it was a universities only network, right? So I think it's really tough when you look at that from when you try to look at somebody who's been successful in a space like that and is now speaking and giving advice. It's really tough to kind of bank on that, in a sense. It's not like it's bad advice. It's not like it's not worth hearing, but you can't sit there and go, such and such a person started a company and within 5 years it was $100 million. That's 5 long years of work to get there, and striking that balance between inspiration and passion, making compromises on the way. But I think when you look at it from the end, it's kind of that Facebook, social media, comparative lifestyle we live, where people, you're seeing the end results. You're seeing the best foot put forward. It's kind of like when you go on Facebook and all your friends are like, who's posting life's difficulties? Not really anybody, right? And that makes it really tough, because then you see all this and you're like, oh, well, why am I not there? I'm following my dream. How come this isn't working for me?
Yep. And then
so when that happens, like, what's the next step? How do you deal with that, Kevin?
Honestly, I'm still struggling to deal with that, because I haven't had much success yet by any traditional societal measure, right? So I have that internal dialogue going on in my head still continually. Like, what if I'm not good enough? What if it doesn't work? What do people think about? And I mean, it's tough, but I think the thing that helps me the most to get out of those kind of down thought cycles is remembering that everybody is generally worried about themselves. It's not like just because, on social media, you get these likes and you post stuff and whatnot. I mean, yeah, people like it, whatever, but most people spend the vast majority of their time thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about, oh yeah, that guy, Kevin, he's not successful. They're not thinking about that very much. I'm thinking about that, right? Yeah. I'm judging myself. I don't need to worry about what other people think as much as I do.
But probably don't know what, 75% of my quote unquote friends on Facebook are up to.
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't either.
But our
But I also don't
lizard
use
brains,
Facebook, which is part of it.
but our lizard
So
brains tell us that we need to be liked and respected, right? Otherwise, we're gonna get kicked out of the village. So
Can I have a
it's
sidebar for a second?
sure.
Why is it lizards in a village? Why is this not the because I've heard the lizard brain phrase from a lot of different people. Why are they not monkey brain?
Because the monkey came after the lizard.
Well, yeah, but lizards didn't live in community villages, and I don't. Do lizards really give a shit what the other lizards think about them? The monkeys might, because monkeys are social.
I think it's because the like amygdala that we have, I think lizards have them too. Whereas, yes, we share more of our brains with monkeys, but we share that part of our brain with reptiles too, I think. I don't know. I'm just repeating this analogy that I've been heard many, many times.
I had this conversation with somebody yesterday when they brought up the lizard brain, and yeah, it's. I mean, I get where you're coming from. Our subconscious, effectively.
And
Our
if you're someone like
subconscious, right?
yeah, and if you're someone like me who's kind of predisposed to want to please people, it can be really hard.
Yeah, that's a tough one because
well,
I
that's
don't
all
think
you
you can.
see all around you in
Yeah,
society.
And then but then
I'm
you worry
similar to you that way, Kevin, and it causes me stress.
when you worry too much about pleasing other people instead of pleasing yourself, and potentially, you're at your customer's peril potentially.
Can we clip that out later and that clip of Kevin Kwan
What?
that he
What
worries
did
too much about pleasing other people and never pleases himself? I think we could put that. If you were still online dating, Kevin, we could put that on your profile.
Yeah, save that one for the roast someday.
I hear you though. You agonize, you stress, you worry about your impression that you're putting out there, often at the cost of your own well-being.
Oh,
right?
Definitely.
And so it creates this cycle where it's like, well, what do people? And then coming back to what do people think of me? Well, it's easy for people to go and look at, I think, these successful people who are like, follow your passion. I did, and look at me.
Mm-hmm.
And
pay me $497 and I'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah, which just listen to our podcast and it's free, and we'll give you some more.
And it's really
The self-help industry kind of frustrates me. I'm not gonna lie, because I don't think that a lot of people actually are getting the help that they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a whole other topic I could go off on for a long time.
Let's do it. Let's do an episode on that. That'd be fun. But back to the point. So it's passion. Let's go to the other side of the fence. Chasing the money, or at least how we're viewing the other side of the fence today. I don't think they're mutually exclusive necessarily.
Oh, not at all.
But for the purposes of framing this conversation, the other side of it is chase the money. So what are the pitfalls of chasing money? Kwan?
Well, you could be chasing something that's not there.
Yeah. Okay. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of times when we come up with a good idea or what we think is a good idea, there's a lot of positive thoughts that come along with that. And, one of the things is, oh, I'm going to be rich. This is my $1 million idea. But, there's so many things that are involved, as we know. And if you don't execute the right way, or if there's no demand or the timing's not there, then really, like, is the money even there to chase? Like, are you wasting your efforts at that point in time?
Yeah. Or on the flip side, the money's there. You work your ass off to get it at the expense of everything else in your life, and compromising personal values, ethics, depending on the situation, right? Like, I think it's just the total flip side. Just chase the money above all else. You're probably not going to be too happy with yourself.
And then ask yourself, like, once you, if the money is there and you do get it, what are you going to do with all that money?
Yeah.
And what are you sacrificing for it?
What's the money for?
like you don't want to die with that with the money buried with you, right? Like what's the point
Some
of that?
people would.
Is it a game? Is that your scorecard? Is to compare your
Yeah. Let's
how
actually.
much money you have in
I
your
like
bank?
to hang on. I want to talk about the scorecard.
Yeah.
So, rat race, scorecards. Let's talk about like climbing the corporate ladder.
Well, or even just in your business, right? Like how much money are you making? Money's a simple, tangible thing that allows for easy comparison, right? And I think too often that's what people use to compare.
So here's how I view it. You have to, from a money standpoint, you have to weigh your personal flexibility, your ability to execute on that. Because that has value, is what I'm saying. So all these intangibles of being an entrepreneur have value. So add that up, figure out what your earnings are, figure out, and then look at what you could make elsewhere. And compare the value of both. And either, add the flexibility and being your own boss and all these wonderful things, add that to the value of your compensation as an entrepreneur, compare it to your salary, and sit back there and say, what's my opportunity cost?
Well, and also it's not just about money. Like how much do you really need?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Value your intangibles, right? Because I think that's going to give you a better outlook on life than just going, like, to quote somebody I was discussing, they said to me, it's really hard when you work 60 hours a week and you make half of what you could be, because you want your business to be successful too, and grow in these things. And yeah, I hear you, but at the same time, you got to add on that value of, hey, what's your, you're following that dream has intangible value.
Yeah, and that's where that marriage of money and passion, I think, lies, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because, let's say I could make X amount more. For instance, let's say double or something. If I was to go work a job, I make double the money, but I'm working for somebody else. I'm not necessarily working in something I'm passionate about. I'm not my own boss. I'm not involved in maybe I'm not involved in the strategic direction of the organization, which is something that gives me satisfaction about our firm. Then if I look at it from the other side, there's that 2 times number, and then it's like tick, tick, tick with all these drawbacks.
Yeah.
Right. And then where are you really sitting at the end of the day? For me, I'll fully admit that I struggle with the work-life balance aspect. So that I don't feel like I've got the flexibility at this stage of running the business. This also could be because we're in the throes of tax season. So I'm purely in like survival mode that way. And so that could be where my comments are probably colored a little bit that way. But you know what I'm saying, right? Like it's there's value there. I have to get for myself. I have to grab that. But then the question is, I look at it and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm making a little less cash dollars, and maybe I'll make more. But there's other factors at play.
Yeah, what's the broader quality of life?
Yeah.
Yeah, now I know Kwan's going to have to run here in a couple minutes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kwan.
No worries.
Did you have any? I know you wanted to talk about this side of things. So what did you have to add?
Well, what I find is I got to a point in my life where, I thought money would make me happy. And it was in the corporate world when I was, after I hit a certain point in my career and I was, making a really good wage and getting big bonuses and whatnot. And I really felt I still, there was something missing, and it wasn't anything that money could, I could have made another 100 grand, 200 grand, whatever, but I don't think it would have filled that void that I had, that I was looking for to be happy. And that was kind of, that was a trigger in my life. And
how do you feel today?
I feel much happier. I think for me, what happiness is about is just having that control over and flexibility over your own decisions and your time and how you spend that time. and not kind of living on someone else's agenda. So, it took some reflection and all that, and struggles internally to come to that realization. But for me, that's what it was. And so, that's my perspective on money. And it kind of carries on into our business. Like, that's the reason why, even though we're in a partnership, I don't care what I sell and what you sell. We're not trying to.
It's not a scorecard.
It's not a scorecard. I'm not trying to take, a big part of the pie if it's there for me. Like, we're in this together, and we're in it for a different reason.
And the irony of that attitude, I think, is if you shake out last year, I think you and I pretty much we're about even, hey, in terms of what we build.
I don't know. I didn't even look into it. So
I think we talked about it at one point briefly, or maybe it was. Yeah, I can't remember. But at one point last year, I was looking at it just out of curiosity, and yeah, it was pretty darn close. And I think that's because we don't keep score. It's not a competition.
And if you look at our business plan, if you look at the goals that we're trying to achieve, it's not really driven by money. It's driven by what we want to accomplish, where we want to be.
Yeah.
As an organization, the types of processes we want in place, and
we view the money.
Obviously,
all
of that.
Right?
Yeah, all of that has implications on the bottom line, but it's not like we're saying, hey, we want to be a $10 million firm by next year or anything like that.
Yeah. Which I think is good. I think that's the right attitude to have, because then everybody's pulling towards the same common goal with different angles. And I know, and to break it down to a granular level, I know last year there was a stretch where I was buried, and you were taking care of a bunch of the marketing and a whole bunch of process work that I couldn't do. And so that I could focus on just getting deliverables out the door. And then, same thing happened later on in the same year, where I had gotten through that project, and all of a sudden I was light, and we reversed roles. And so we keep the ship moving forward by taking on whatever responsibility has to happen, which I think is why we were successful last year. I think it was a huge part of it, that cooperative nature. And then the money comes. The money just will show up effectively. If you just work on the other aspects. But
money's really not a good enough why in this day and age. There's got to be something more.
No, it's a need in our society.
To a point, like Quan
said. But it isn't a why. That's a really good way of putting it.
There's been lots of studies that show around $70,000 to $80,000 of income, you're pretty much going to meet your basic needs, and then you need to get satisfaction. And I totally experienced that exact same thing that Quan said.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're striving towards too, is to achieve that satisfaction, and then we're not really worried about things.
Yeah.
The other side for me is I would like, the main driver from a money standpoint for me is to get our business to a point where we've got enough budget to be able to execute on some of our strategy. And right now it's a little bit of a scarce resource, where it's okay, we've got to allocate it to the right place for maximum return. I'm looking forward to the day where we've grown it to a point where we can take a little bit of chance and a little bit of risk and try some of these ideas that were maybe not guaranteed wins, but could have a big upside for the business. And that's something I'm really looking forward to, because I think once we reach that level, then we can really start to get this perpetual motion machine going. And I'm excited for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So final thoughts. Don't ignore reality, but definitely don't do this without inspiration.
Yeah.
And passion.
Yeah. Find the happy marriage, the intersection of.
And don't give up the first time you hit a roadblock if you really care about it.
Yeah.
And if you don't really care, you won't have a problem giving up. And that's okay. It's that, but learn the lesson from that this probably wasn't your passion.
Yep.
Because without the passion and the drive, the first roadblock, if I didn't have the passion and drive to be doing what I'm doing, I would have probably 18 months ago been back at a job.
Yep.
Realistically.
Yeah, you're right.
So, Quan, would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I have a new idea, if I lose passion for it, I don't even revisit anything related to it, and I usually know within 6 to 8 weeks.
I call those Quan hobbies.
Hey, I have those too all the time.
Yeah, you guys are very similar that way. I do it a little bit, but usually I'm less decisive than both of you guys, so I noodle stuff around for a while and then eventually just forget about it, and then I realize I probably didn't care that much in the first place.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys are a little more adventurous. You go actually try stuff out and then are like, this is stupid, and bail. And that's okay. Like,
Gotta
why
experiment.
not? Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, we better let Quan go.
Yeah, Quan, go have a good day.
Thanks, guys.
We'll catch up later, everybody. And to our listeners, Quirk Radio on YouTube, at the Hashmarks on Twitter, at Quan_Lee, and Kevin B. Langman on Twitter, right?
Yep.
Did I get that right? All right, everybody, we'll see you next week. Have a good one.